All right, let's go to the phones. Nikki Chavanelle joining us, reporter and editor at Hogbeat, covering all things Arkansas athletics. Nikki, you taking the opportunity to work outside today, huh?
I was. I'm inside now. I don't want any, dog incidents like last week.
Forgot to ask about your pup's conjunctivitis issue, which I think was the thing last week. Are you done pulling the crusties out of his eyes?
Oh, yeah. We got some drops. He's all good now, finally.
Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. Makes a happy dog mom, which I know you should be proud I just called you that.
I am.
All right. So we got another new commit. That's 18 for the Razorbacks. Tell us about Bryce Stephens, the newest commitment for Sam Pittman's 2021 class.
Yes, sir. So Bryce Stephens was offered by Arkansas in May of last year, and he, was high on the board. He's a 5.73 star, so he's the highest level of 3-star that there is. He's number 2 by rivals in the state of Oklahoma. So I had him high on the board for Arkansas wide receiver, but it became pretty clear who their very top targets were, and then they got Jaden Wilson out of Texas. They got Raheem Sanders out of Florida. And then it was, they got the transfer from Oklahoma, so it kind of seemed like they were going to hold out for, Keytron Jackson, who is a 4-star, also out of Texas. But, Bryce Stephens saw all these fellow Oklahoma players committing to Arkansas, and I think that kind of re-stirred both parties' interest and communication. And John Cooper and Justin Stepp, when they heard that Bryce wanted to commit, there's really no reason to say no to a kid like him. He's 6'1", 175, so he's a smaller wide receiver than what Stepp has recruited for the most part up to this point. But he has been, verified at a 4.3 40, so he has a speed that you definitely can't pass up. And he's the 6th commit from Oklahoma, so they really, put their footprint out there. And he had an offer from Oklahoma State, but not from the Sooners.
So Rivals has Stephens listed still as an athlete for his position. You refer to him as a wide receiver, and I wonder, is that where you think they're looking at him, specifically at wide receiver, or do you think that there could still be a chance of him at a different position?
So as a junior, he also spent a little time at running back, and then he also played defensive back and corner. But, he's such a good receiver that I think that's definitely where they'll, start him out. You never know how things go. Guys occasionally change positions, but with his skill set, I just really like what he brings to the table as a runner. And he managed to find separation. He's not a very big guy, but, once he gets that separation, he has good hands and he can really break away from you. And he is a returner as well.
So with Arkansas getting Stephens now, still a shot at Keytron Jackson. I know that there's a couple of other real big programs that are in on him too.
Yeah, Texas has surged for Jackson. He went to the 40 acres to go visit just on his own. He can't see the coaches on campus, but they FaceTimed him while he was walking around, so it was kind of like they were there with him. It's a cool little workaround that Arkansas probably won't get to take advantage of very much just because, kids don't often just happen to be coming by Fayetteville. So Texas is surging for him. He also has TCU on his list, so 2 in-state programs. I know that he has a great relationship with Stepp, but he's far from a sure thing, and that's why I think, they couldn't pass up on Stephens when he wanted to commit. And then there's also Jaden Thomas, a wide receiver from Georgia, who they've been recruiting really hard as well. He's also a 4-star, and he is a shortstop and outfielder, and he has had conversations with the baseball staff as well. But, any kid that comes in wanting to play football and baseball is a football scholarship, so they couldn't work that around. But I think if either of those 2 guys really wanted to commit, they would find room either by not taking like a 4th or 5th offensive lineman or only taking 2 defensive linemen. It's really just kind of how it works out at the time, maybe who wants to come on board first. I think Jackson wants to decide within a month. So I don't know, not trending their way right now, but I think if he wanted to commit, they would find a way to make it happen.
Speaking to Nikki Chavanelle here on Halftime, Nikki, it really seems like here recently the Sam Pittman's really been pursuing Oklahoma talent during his recruiting. And when you look at past recruits that come from Oklahoma, it's almost in a sense leads to success of coaches that recruit Oklahoma well as they come to Arkansas. I think it's safe to say that Sam Pittman's really put an emphasis on Oklahoma players coming to Arkansas.
Well, I think they're a little bit underrated. Rivals doesn't have a single player ranked a 4-star right now that I know of. Maybe Kendall Daniels, who's number 1, but I don't think he's even a 4-star yet. So underrated talent in the state. And Sam Pittman has a lot of roots there. John Cooper played at Oklahoma, Brad Davis. So they have a lot of ties to the state of Oklahoma, so that just makes it easier for them. And then when Oklahoma, the university is so powerful as a program right now that they're going nationally to recruit, that leaves a big void in the state for a powerhouse to come in and to take players if it's not the University of Oklahoma. So Arkansas can really capitalize on that. And so far it seems like a good plan, although today there was a thread on the Trough, our message board, and people were trying to come up with names of, really big players that Arkansas has gotten from the state of Oklahoma in the past. And besides, like, Cam Curl and Ricky Stromberg is looking like a really solid prospect. Not a lot of names came up, in the past decade that were, like, really, really talented guys.
I want to switch to basketball just for a second, get your thoughts on Isaiah Joe. We've talked extensively about it in the previous segment. We'll continue to do so until probably basketball season rolls around. But your initial thoughts when Isaiah Joe kind of probably shocked a lot of Razorback fans and decided to return to the University of Arkansas.
Yeah, it was a surprise. Love a good surprise. We don't get a lot of those. I feel like these days news kind of ends up trickling out one way or another, whether we can report on it or not. But this, I feel like a lot of people were genuinely surprised, and I was as well. But it's absolutely great for Eric Musselman. First of all, he probably could not have found a guy to bring in at this point that would add as much as Isaiah Joe adds to the team. His shooting ability gives Musselman's team a little bit more of an identity if they want to go towards that direction of just being like a high-power shooting team. And then he's obviously got Muss's kind of way of doing things down, his system down. And he's not like the most talkative guy, but in the way that he does things, he showed a lot of leadership. So just all around really good to keep him. And then also now he has the goal that the NBA wants to see him achieve, like adding weight and stuff. So he'll be more motivated to do that, and that'll make him a better player for, Musselman's team while they get to have him for one more year.
We've talked a lot about expectations for this team and kind of where is that. Now, I think prior to Isaiah Joe announcing his decision, I think we all kind of assumed this is an NCAA tournament team. Now with him being back, I think Phil would say confidently this is a Sweet 16 team. I don't know if I'm necessarily there yet. What says you? Is this team right now with Isaiah Joe back a Sweet 16 team?
Once you get to the tournament, and I certainly think they're a tournament team, it kind of depends on luck and how your team is put together and whether they're, put together in a way that makes it hard for teams to game plan for them in a short amount of time. If people know exactly who your weapons are, it's a little easier to shut things down. But with Arkansas, it seems like they're just going to have a lot of different ways to attack you, a lot of different lineups. So it does seem like they're a team that could have what it takes to make it far into the tournament.
Just a couple more minutes with Nikki here. So last weekend was the first since the pandemic started where you had 3 major American professional sports leagues playing at the same time. You had baseball, you had hockey, you had the NBA. And I wonder, are you watching any sports on television now? I have trouble keeping baseball off the TV. It doesn't matter what game it is. I just kind of want a game in the background. What are you watching right now?
Yeah, I also keep stuff on in the background, but I've never been like that big of an MLB fan. I'd rather watch college baseball. I don't know what it is about it, but in general, like I've honestly watched like a lot of European soccer. lately. And then I was also watching Last Chance U, getting into, like a football feel. I know everyone right now is like jumping ahead to basketball. I'm like, I want to deal with, what's ahead of us right now. I know it's going to be painful. I know football season isn't going to be a bunch of fun, but for me as a reporter, like, I just like to see how the team develops, and I like watching the guys that I saw as recruits struggle and get better and watch all their challenges and stuff like that.
You develop personal relationships with a lot of these kids, especially when they're high schoolers. You're talking with them one-on-one in a way that, not a lot of people get a chance to later on when they're, more well-known. So I wonder, you had to have seen the Facebook post by the Indiana lineman's mom, Brady Feeney. I wonder what was going through your head when you're reading that, because I know, we all want a football season. We do. I think we have to open ourselves up to the idea that there are going to be more stories like this, heart-wrenching stories, maybe even a death or two of a player. And I hate to sound alarmist, but I just think we have to open up ourselves to the possibility that this is probably going to happen, and it's going to hurt when it does.
Yeah, it is really tough. I mean, there's multiple sides to this. On one hand, like, that kid could have gotten sick pretty much anywhere, and he still would have had the same complications. A lot of people claim that, the kids are as safe on campus, especially right now without other students around. That'll get worse when students come back, but they're safer now on campus than they would be, at home getting into whatever they're getting into. And I see that as well. But it's just also really tough because you know that there's really nothing you can do about it, and you can't tell, who it might strike at. Like, people don't really know this kid, so maybe it's not that, resounding in their mind, but when a star player gets it and is really, really impacted, like, that is going to start resonating with people, and I don't think it's going to take many cases of that to make people, consider if playing football is really worth it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think we're going to, we all have an ethical decision to make in our minds about, how you feel about this. And I think right now I'm kicking it around in my head, really. All right, a little fun to let you go with today's Get Off My Lawn. I've got one at the end of the show. I don't always put you on the spot, even though Tuesdays are your days. What would you kick off your lawn? Since you do have I saw a photo of Nikki's backyard today. She's got a really nice lawn in the backyard. If you want something off that lawn, what is it?
Well, Ben has taken to putting patterns in the backyard very seriously lately, but the Get Off My Lawn is actually for my front lawn. It's kind of like the, grocery store cart debate. When you're walking your dog, do you let them just, poop on someone's lawn, and then do you leave it there because no one's probably seeing you? I've had that happen a couple times this week, and I'm kind of pissed about it. Like, we take good care of our lawn, so get your dog somewhere else, or at least have the decency to pick it up.
Preach it.
I know I didn't catch you, but, it's a sign of, just like the ethical, moral standard that we have to maintain as neighbors. So you have to pick up your dog's poop. Got to do it.
Part of being a community. And I'm going to give Nikki extra points for being the first Get Off My Lawn in the history of this show that actually had to deal with a lawn. That's the first time it ever happened. Nikki, you're the best. We appreciate it as always. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Talk next
Nikki.
week.